Hi, and welcome to the Wise Women's Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Angela Counsel. And with a background as a naturopath, I thought I knew exactly what happened to women when they reached menopause until I experienced it myself. I then realised that there was so much more to this time of life than what was written in the textbooks. I decided it was time to bring this stage of life out of the closet and to have some open and honest conversations with women who are going through the same journey. Wise Women's Conversation has been created to share information and experiences from other wise women in our community. Sit back and listen to the wise women speak. So welcome back to this week's episode of Wise Women Conversation. I'm so excited today because we're speaking to a really, really wise woman. There is so much that this woman knows. Her name is Linda Dyer. She is a coach. She is a speaker. She is the author of 11 best-selling books. She's also an NLP master trainer. There's nothing that this woman doesn't know, and she's going to share with us today some stuff around mindset and how that impacts us as we're growing older and as we're transitioning through this stage of life. One of Linda's books is actually called Age is an Attitude. So we're going to talk a bit about that and some of the research and what Linda found out about when she was writing this book. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So tell us a little bit about, well, let's start with, what's the difference between growing old and aging?
Okay, so if you look, it's funny because I wrote the curriculum for TAFE, and when I was researching the information for the students at TAFE and University, I looked up aging, and of course there's all these theories on aging, and one is the Affleck theory and the cellular theory and etc. that you're just going to get old. The cellular theory says that, and basically they say the same thing. The cellular theory says that your cells will gradually break down, and as your cells break down, you will then duplicate that cell as it is. So, for example, if you look at my cells under a microscope with my naturopath, there's a bite out of some of them, which means I've got a vitamin B problem, and 80% of the population does, so I'm not owning it. And however, it means that I go and take a bit more vitamin B because I don't digest it well, obviously, and we all need it. So when that cell duplicates, it will also duplicate as a cell that hasn't got good vitamin B. So if I let that go, which is what I did, and I'm very good at this, I got lupus. I know exactly how to age really quickly because when you're that unwell, I can tell you, you feel really old. So that's what that cellular theory is. It's the cells will duplicate, and they just, at that some point in their life, they will start to age, and we will become older. However, we can age and be very well, which is what Dr. Mario Martinez said. So aging and old age is a lot to do, I think, with attitude.
And talk a little bit more about the work of Mario Martinez, because I know that you've studied his work and he did the foreword to your book. And this is a lot of the stuff he talks about is our cultural beliefs around aging and how that impacts us. So tell us a little bit more about his work and how you've seen that in the work that you've done.
It's absolutely fascinating because I was on a show called livingconsciously.tv. And I was on there for 5 years as one of the hosts. And he came on as a guest. And it was so exciting because the universe will always send you everybody you need. And so I'm wanting to write this book called Age is an Attitude because my dad said it all the time. And I thought I really must write about that because it's so true from what I learned working in retirement villages, etc., that some of the cranky old people were literally dying in their 60s, and some of the people who were 103 had no walking frame, no glasses, no nothing, because they just felt good about life. And so it started to dawn on me that this age is an attitude didn't just come from my dad. It came from the experience I had working in aged care. So Mario Martinez came on and he talks about working in the blue zones. And the blue zones are all those areas, there's about 5 of them, all those areas around the world where you've got people over 100 and they're well. So he had, for example, I love this, he had a 97-year-old that's still doing heart surgery. And people say to me, I wouldn't let him work on me. I said, why not? He's got all the experience under his
right.
sun. You know, and he looked at why are these people so well, and he came up with a whole lot of really good things that these people do that had commonalities. And one was that they ate lots of fruit and veggies, and if they ate meat, it was grass-fed. And that's all that, and I live by his principles now. I'll eat grass-fed if I'm going to eat meat. And then another one was they don't eat everything on the plate. I don't know about you, and I don't know about the people out there, but how many of you were told to finish everything that was on our plate?
Yep, that's right. We're always told that because the poor people in Africa didn't have anything, so we had to eat what was on our plate.
And also because you got to remember, our parents came out of a war, and so they came out of a war with a poverty mentality that food was hard to get. There was bread and potatoes in some places. That's basically all they had, and they gradually got stamps and food things to go and get others. So this poverty mentality led to you better eat what's in front of you and better eat. You know, I mean, I remember watching my sister almost puke over porridge, and I haven't liked it since. But it was that eating. These people don't. They actually eat until they're full, and they'll eat 3/4 of what's on their plate, and they'll go, right, I'm done. And they'll leave what they don't need. And so that was another thing I noticed that was really interesting. Another thing was that they celebrated life. That when there were times in their life where things happened, they made sure that they celebrated. And the whole community would celebrate it. They would dance in the street or whatever it took. They rode bikes everywhere or walked, so very few cars.
Yep, very active.
And another thing is that they value their older people. And this is something that I've noticed where they bring the older people back into the household and they teach the younger kids how wise the older people are. And if they want to get some great information, to allow granny and grandpa or great granny and grandpa to go and ask them. And my brother was really good at this. My older brother, he would bring my dad, who's just passed away at 95, he would take him down to Canberra and he would get all the grandies to go and ask grandpa about what happened when. And in fact, one of them, I did think, did a big project on dad and his trips through the war and what have you as a project for school. She was so intrigued by what he had to teach there. And so it was about valuing the older people rather than, you know, you're a baby, start walking and talking, you're older, just go away and we lock them up. You know, we put them into nursing homes and retirement villages rather than value who they are and make them a part of, you know, of life. There was another lady and myself, she was a doctor and she also had an aging father, and we were doing things very similarly. When my father moved in with me, I actually got my brother to build us a garden out the back. And because he was used to being on the farm, I got him to what we call harvest the crop. Go and get the 3 spinach leaves or the 1 tomato. But for him, that was, he was rapt about harvesting the crop. And so he ate as organically as he could. We laughed a lot. We involved him in the family. And when he went back to the mental health place, because he had the beginnings of dementia, the guy said he had the least decline in his mental health of anyone that has been through that clinic in 3 years. And she had the same thing that happened with her father, and she did the same stuff. Make out a to-do list every day of things that they can do, and they can keep them active and value them.
So give them purpose.
Give them purpose, but the same for you. What purpose do we give ourselves? And where do we value us? Where have we lost that value in us where we don't give ourselves enough time like we should, and then we can start valuing us a little bit more, and then we'll pay more attention to what we eat, what we think, etc. And all of a sudden we notice we've got more natural energy and we're just not aging as quickly.
Yeah, I think this is a big issue for women as they're coming through this stage of life, this value, because for many of us, we're mums. And as our children grow older and no longer are as dependent on us, we tend to lose our value because we don't have a value as a mother. I mean, we're always a mother, but we're not a hands-on mother anymore. So we kind of start to lose our value. And I know that I've been through that, as my kids get older and more independent, it's like, well, they don't need me anymore. Who am I? And I think this is a big thing that happens to many, many women, because we put our value in being a mother, or we put our value in being an employee or a business owner. We put our value outside of ourselves. And then as those things start to change, we struggle to find the value that we are just because I am valued. Because we've been taught for our whole life that our value comes from what we give other people and how.
Because it was about what
feel.
we do and then what we have, rather than who we be. That whole scenario of be, do, have, which is another book coming up. So it was about the doing, and we were valued by what we did. I mean, I got lupus running around doing so I could have, I had the house, the boat, the car, I had everything I needed, but I was sick. Who was I being? Not very well. So been there, done that, and looking at the scenario, when Dr. Martinez looked at women who had gone through that stage, like you were saying, I've seen it both with men and women, though, and men that are CEOs of companies, and then they leave the company and they go, who am I? And they change instantly, because society says, and what do you do? And all of a sudden the man says, nothing. Or the woman says, nothing, because the kids have left home or whatever. And so that nothing resonates inside, saying, I am nothing, rather than, well, my dad used to say, I don't know how I had time for work, because he found so much to do. He would go and help the neighbour build something, because he was a builder. With 7 kids, he kept very busy. So it's about that identity, like you say. Dr. Mario Martinez looked at women going through that change of life and who they became, and a lot of it was based on culture. And I went to a meeting just recently called Women in Leadership, and the whole topic for that morning was culture. How big is culture? It's massive, in that it's an embedded type of value that is brought down through generation upon generation upon generation. And I just had this conversation this morning with an Italian girl, and she found it so difficult to fit in with this way of life because of the culture. And she said, even in their culture back in Italy, they don't behave like my grandparents behaved. So it wasn't just an Italian thing. It was really the way the grandparents behaved, which was embedded in the parents, which was embedded in her. And she's going to talk about next month about the changes that she's had to go through and the limits she's had to release to be able to move forward. And they're all cultural changes, cultural limits. So Mario Martinez found this profound research in that the Japanese women, when he studied the Japanese, because there's some blue zones in Japan, in that the Japanese women, when they go through menopause, it is like that pink blossom that comes out in Japan.
Yeah, the new spring.
It's that new spring, And when I was in Japan, one of the women I was with, she'd say to me, the reason why we love the blossom so much is it's the only colour we get. She said, have a look around, Linda. She said, in Australia, you've got, blonde hair, blue eyes, colourful outfits. She said, look, on this train station we were going to go out for the day. She said, just look around. Black hair, brown eyes, black suits. She said, we don't have the colour that you have in Australia that you take for granted. So the pink blossom, the spring of the blossom, has so much meaning to us. It brings out that colour. And women who are going through menopause are thought of as having a whole new wisdom, a whole new spring, a whole new start to their life. But then he looked at the women from Cuba, and the women from Cuba that were going through menopause. I think that's where men have a pause. Women have a pause from men. However, the menopause was a disgrace, and that they were thought less of. It was quite interesting culturally the way they felt about women going through menopause. And ironically enough, it affected their health and affected their aging process. So older women in Japan look beautiful. Older women in Peru were starting to age. They were starting to get a lot more stress, a lot more health problems. And it came out as a whole cultural problem in that country simply because of the way they thought about menopause.
It's interesting because I went to South America a year before last, about 18 months ago. And we went to a place, La Paz, which is a really big Lake Titicaca, which is the largest lake or the highest altitude lake in the world. And we went to a place whereby we went into a village, but it was on the lake. And everybody, they built these islands out of reeds. But when you looked at the hierarchy within the village, it was a matriarchal society. But the leader or the person in charge was the mother, not the grandmother. So the mother was the one who was in charge. But as the woman got older, she lost her place to her daughter. And so that it was because the men, they were just basically did what she said. So yeah, so in that culture, it was matriarchal, but it was at the level of the childbearing.
And it may be a matriarchal until she goes through menopause.
Yes.
And then, as I said, there's a different feeling.
Yeah, because she dropped back down.
And it reflects in their health.
Yeah.
Their aging is quicker. The stress and the health that comes on is dramatic. And that's what Dr. Mario Martinez found.
Yeah, and you see that a lot when you actually see the women over there, because they do look really, really old and weathered. But I don't think they're probably not as old as they look. But you see that the women, like the older woman, they look very old and very weathered. And but they're probably not much older than we are.
Yes, because they could age very, very quickly after they go. And it depends, of course, what age they are when they go through menopause. Sadly, women are going through menopause way too early. From a physical fitness point of view, which is what I also used to lecture in, the earlier we go through menopause, the more chance we have of osteoporosis. So we want to not go through menopause, or have it put off as long as we possibly can. And we'll tend to go through menopause around the same time our mum did.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Which is great if you know when your mother went through menopause, or if you're like me, my mother went through menopause at mid-20s because she had a full hysterectomy. So for me, I didn't have any of that guidelines as to what menopause was going to be like, when it was going to happen, because my mother went through it in her early 20s. Because when there were in those days, whenever there were any issues with the menstrual cycle or the uterus or the ovaries, they just took it all out.
Yeah.
They just kind of chopped it out. Don't need that anymore. You want any more children? No, okay, let's just get rid of it. And so we've got a lot of women in this age group who, and because that wasn't unusual for what my mother went through was not unusual, but then we also had women the same age as my mother who didn't talk about menopause. So we've now got women now who are going through this time of life and they have no idea. There's a lot of fear around it, which is one of the reasons why I want to open these conversations. And the mindset is, menopause is the end, the beginning of the end. It's going to be a terrible time of life. You're going to, it's because we only ever hear the horror stories of how gross it is. We don't hear the fantastic stories of women like you who just your period. Just
breeze through it.
Yes, right. So it is possible.
What's menopause?
I want everyone to know it is possible. But what do you think the key is that makes this difference between those women who are struggling to get through and those women who basically menopause simply means cessation of the periods and nothing else changes?
I honestly believe it's got a lot to do with your diet. I honestly believe that. So I had lupus, and I was starting to really learn about autoimmunes and starting to eat really healthily, etc. And when I had lupus, I went through hot flushes, but it wasn't menopause. And the hot flushes were, I associated hot flushes to be the releasing of toxins.
Mm-hmm.
So and I noticed the more that women who went through menopause had the hot flushes, they were also women that didn't have good diets and drank wine or alcohol. So the body then needs to expel it, and it expels it through hot flashes. And that's why I didn't suffer from that, because I wasn't a drinker. As I said, I did when I had lupus, so I know what hot flashes is like. And that were the toxins leaving my system, not when I was going through menopause. However, when you're going through menopause, there was this, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 kilo of weight that can come on, because a lot of people just associate menopause with, as you say, the end. I'm going to put on weight. I'm not going to feel good about myself because my hormones are changing. So I'm going to have fights with my husband. The husband goes off and looks for someone younger, and etc. And this is all part of the scenario, whereas it doesn't have to be like that at all. It can simply be that I need to nutrify myself to go through this. It's going to happen anyway. And how can I do this? Because yes, I did put on the weight, and then I was starting to ascertain, was that weight put on because I was going through menopause, or was it because I was at that age that I literally stopped doing the level of activity I used to do? And there's a lot of truth in that. It's not just because you're going through menopause, but, I'm not now, swimming a mile a day. I'm not now playing cricket or tennis for the state. I'm not now, you know what I mean? Like, I was really, really active. And then all of a sudden, when you get to around 50 or whatever it is, 60, between 50 and 65, because some women I spoke to had menopause from 35, and others, one woman said to me, at 65, I just stopped having periods.
That's a late one.
That's a late one. And good on her, because that means her bone density is going to stay good for a lot longer. Because one of the things about menopause is the hormones change, and you want that progesterone in your body as long as you can, because it makes you feel better. It is the gesterone, the home for the egg. We don't need it anymore. However, it keeps us calm.
Mm-hmm.
It's that feel-good hormone. And so quite often going through, and I remember my mum going through menopause, she became huge. And I mean huge. She put on the equivalent of 6 stone, which is like 90 pounds in the American weight. And so, yes, she took it off, but it was such a dramatic change for her. And I remember my dad and mum arguing, and I remember she went through a terrible time, but then she'd had 7 kids. They did, like you say, they had done some surgery the minute she had the 7th child. They started tying tubes and doing all sorts of stuff to women in those days to stop them having more children. I told Dad to just shake a hand, but anyway, that didn't go down
that didn't work.
We're all 15 to 18 months apart, We're all Navy driven. And so, she became a very, very big woman, and she didn't even like herself. So, watching my mum and watching the patience of my dad go through that with mum was amazing. And then mum just made up her mind. This is what she was like. She would just make up her mind one day, I'm going to go and get to a nutritionist and lose the weight. And of course, then she just lose the weight.
Mm.
So, however, the menopause, you can't blame menopause for that. My mum changed. The children had grown up. You're not running around after your children as much as you used to. You're not doing the level of exercise you used to do, etc. Does that make sense?
And I think a lot of symptoms get blamed on menopause.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
fact, you know, most of the symptoms have got something to do, as we said, diet,
Yep.
stress, too much alcohol, and also the fact that our bodies are changing. Our bodies do change because of the shift in hormones, but that's a natural change. But we don't accept the fact that our body is changing. So then we start to fight it, and we do all these things to stop those things. And then that then puts us in this eternal loop that we don't like ourselves.
And we crave foods that we shouldn't be eating. So if we're not having as much sex, then we start craving chocolate, which gives us exactly the same hormone that
chocolate's better.
I could argue. However, I've started to really like chocolate. only the dark one. But yeah, you're right. And then my dad would bring mum home a bar of chocolate as a treat. And, you know, they sit more, and they might eat more cake, and they might, you know,
then they're drinking more wine. These days it's wine. It's a lot of wine. I mean, women, the biggest drinkers of wine, biggest consumers of wine are women over the age of 45.
Yep. And the sweats, they pay for it when they go through menopause.
But then,
because the hot sweats, I've noticed most of the women that I've had who have gone through menopause, they talk about the hot flashes, and every one of them, without a word of a lie, were drinkers.
Yep. Totally. I totally agree. And then when you're getting the night sweats and you're waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., liver time. Yeah. But it's really hard to tell women that that's the issue, because they don't want to give up, because that's like, oh, the only good thing in my life is my alcohol, is my wine every night. So, well, you've got to make a choice. Do you want the hot flushes or do you want the wine? And many go, well, yeah, I'll just live with the hot flushes and I'll drink the wine.
Yeah. Or even for lunch. You know, they did a TV show once with the women whose husbands earned really good money, and they didn't feel like they needed to go and work anymore, and they'd meet for lunch. Well, those lunches would go for hours. And there was always a lot of wine involved.
And that's part of our culture too, isn't it? As opposed to the blue zones. Now, in the blue zones, because I know I've got friends who just come back from Korea, which is a blue zone. They drink alcohol, but they don't drink it for hours and hours on end. No. They drink it as part of their meal. And it's not like they have, you know, they'll drink, but they don't drink it the way we drink it.
And they can put the cork in, or put the tap on, the top on, and they can put it away.
That's
and that was one of the biggest bone of contentions that I used to have with my ex-husband, was, why can't we put the lid on and have that again tomorrow, you know, rather than we have to sit here and watch you drink the whole bottle. And I never understood that mindset of, I can't just have a glass. And so the thing is, you're going to pay for it. You know, I paid for it with sugar. I was a sugar addict as a kid growing up, because I was so active. I was looking for, and in the fitness industry, we had Mars bars and bananas. Or M&M peanuts, because we justify them as protein, and bananas. And bananas. And, you know, I didn't drink water because my parents wouldn't let us have Coke or cordial. So I thought, well, stuff it, I won't drink anything. Hence constipation and the headaches. So I learned to drink a lot more water. And when I came back really sick from Africa, the first thing the doctor at the university said to me, you need to get onto hot water and just start drinking the water and getting that back into the cells. And so I had to learn, whereas now you won't see me without something in my hand. I've either got a bottle of water in my car or a green tea in my hand, and I literally drink all day. And so, again, I don't have the hot sweats. If I'm even starting to get even the tinge of a headache, I can just drink 2 glasses of water and the headache's gone. You see, the liver will either throw you a headache, a skin rash, or a hot sweat in order to empty out, because at the end of the day, our organs are there to assist you.
Yeah.
They're wanting you to let go of the toxins. So if you're going to keep putting the toxins in, then you're going to have a harder time of having to release them.
Get it out again. So because we have to finish up here and very soon, what would be your top 3 tips for women who are just starting to come through this stage of life, they're possibly experiencing symptoms, or maybe they're not quite there, then what are your top 3 tips for what women could do to make this time of life a time of ease and joy and having a great time, as opposed to what other women are?
Just understand that it's a natural process.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, it's a natural process. It is going to happen to all of us. So the fact that you think it's not going to happen to you, I don't know what planet you're on, but
yeah, you can go on the oral contraceptive pill, because that's what doctors do these days, is they give you an oral contraceptive pill to stop them from going into menopause. It's like, well, that actually puts you in, that is actually, to me, I see that as chemical menopause anyway.
Absolutely, because
it stops your ovulation.
I can share with you now that if you're I've been on the pill for more than 5 years, you have a 50% chance of having what I had, which was an autoimmune disease. So that's why any woman that's on any of those things needs to be, because of the side effects, you know. So one thing is about understanding that you're going to go through it, and secondly, loving yourself for who you are. Just love who you are, and if you've put on a couple of kilos, it's okay. You're going through some changes, and work out how did those changes manifest, because the only reason we put on weight is when we take in more calories than we're expending. So if it means we've cut down on our exercise, or we've increased something that puts on weight, we might like to just look at that. So I used to say to my sisters, you either take something away or add something. So you add exercise, or you take afternoon tea away. You take portions of food away, or you add, does that make sense? Or you add more nutrition. So it's so easy, and a kilo or 2 kilos can fall off easily when we just change simple habits. So I started to detox more, and I would detox the body, and then I invented that 3-day detox that I also got from the cellulologist at Sydney Uni, where you can just go on 3 days of fruit and vegetables in warm water, and all of a sudden your cells are clean, you've lost that kilo, and you're back to square one, you know, and embrace the fact that you don't have to deal with periods anymore. You know what? One of the great things about going through menopause, for me, I feel lighter. I feel like I can do anything. We got no inhibitions anymore, you know? It's a whole, embrace it. Love who you are, understand that you're going to go through it, love who you are, and embrace it. Because you don't get caught up in anyone else's crap anymore. You just
That's right, you don't care, do you?
I met this lady in town at a women's event, and we ended up going into Haig's chocolate shop, which was right next door to Dimmicks. That's where I was heading.
Oh,
and this girl, no, we were, and this girl said something to us, and this woman next to me, she just said straight out, "We don't care." When you get to a certain age, you don't care if you're going to put on a little bit of weight with that, because you know how to do a 3-day detox and get it off here. It's really easy, but your inhibitions start. It's like a child. You come back with no inhibitions, and you'll give anything a go, and things just don't bother you like they used to. So, but I think the important part of that is understand that the more you can hold on to your progesterone, that feel-good hormone, the better you'll be in that going through menopause role, because it'll just keep you calm.
And the best way to hold on to your progesterone is to be eating well.
Yes, and especially minerals. Minerals make hormones.
Yeah, and fats.
Yes.
Good fats, healthy fats. We don't want low-fat stuff around here.
No. Avocado.
So I want to thank you. Where can people find out more about you, and also check out your book, Ages and Attitude, plus all the myriad of other ones?
Sure. If they go on to mindpowerglobal.com.au, that's mindpowerglobal.com.au, and they go to the store, they can see all my books. If they'd like to come and do some work with me, I've just finished with a client, and we were also talking, and even for men, we were talking about progesterone, especially if men are getting moody and cranky. They also may be progesterone deficient. So, you know, there are ways for us women to help ourselves and also to give it to men.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, mindpowerglobal.com.au. By all means, email me, go on the site, have a look around. If you go to store, you'll see all my books. And I'm doing some webinars coming up. So yeah, be in touch.
Yep, and I'll put all that in the show notes. So if people are driving around at the moment, just look at the show notes and you'll find all of the links in there. Now, I want to thank you, Linda. This has been such a great conversation. You are a wealth of knowledge. You have always been a wealth of knowledge. And I always, because I've known you now for a few years, and the one thing that always strikes me is that you are so full of vitality. You definitely have not let your age get in the way of what you do, because you, every time, you know, you show up, you do so much. I'm amazed that you have the energy that you've got, because you do so much. And I really want to congratulate you for really embracing who you are and embracing this stage of your life.
Oh, thank you. Well, you see, 70 is a new 50. Well, that's what I'm thinking too anyway.
Right, yeah, it sounds good. Not quite there yet, but that means I must be about 25. No, I don't want to be 25 again. No. No. So thanks for your time today, Linda, and thanks to all of our listeners. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation, and go check out the work that Linda's doing and check out her books. She's got, if there's a topic you want to know about, Linda's written a book about it, guaranteed. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, let it go, guys. Just embrace.
Thanks a lot. Wasn't that an absolutely fantastic conversation with Linda? What was your big takeaway? Feel free to pop over to my Facebook page or my Insta page at Angela Counsel and share with me, what was it that you learned from this conversation? Was there some big takeaways? Are there things that you might do different, or different ways of thinking about growing older? Now, if you think that you know someone who would benefit from hearing this episode and learning more about the mindset around aging, or any of the conversations that I'm having here on the podcast, please feel free to share it with friends, relatives, anybody you think would benefit from knowing about how you can navigate this perimenopause and menopause stage of life with ease. It is my mission to have as many women as possible really move through this stage of life as easily as possible. And the more women we can share this information with, the more women who will be able to learn from it. So that's it from me this week. I'll be back next week with another fantastic episode. I've been doing so many recordings and I've been speaking to so many women, and it's just blowing my mind, just the information and the generosity of these women. So I'm so looking forward to bringing them to you over the next few weeks. So that's it from me, from my heart to yours. Infinite love and gratitude. Bye for now.